Hello, my name is Norbert Pralle. I'm from Germany. I work for the Austrian contractor Starbag. In my daily work, I deal with the future of construction. My presentation today will be about the built environment of tomorrow. I will be sketching a little bit what the challenges of construction could be in the future. Enjoy the presentation. I look forward to discussing with you. Thank you. First of all, hello. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my first in Riga, so I get to see something, and I actually thought this is always, the weather's always like that here, so. Okay. I will say something about the built environment of tomorrow and how we're shaping it. To the right, you see a picture made around the beginning of the 19th century, or the 20th century, turn of the 19th to 20th century. I call it the Julian Verne era. It was the first time where looking into the future was actually becoming more popular. People were thinking, what's going to happen? It was technology driven. Jules Verne was one of the visionaries who of course could tell stories, and actually almost of all his visions came true technologically. To the right you see the picture. There's also a postcard how people envisioned the year 2000 on the construction site. Interesting. There's an architect and he's handling some machines, and it's cables. It's not pneumatic, so it's quite impressive. I would like to say Starbag, maybe some of you may have heard of Starbag or not. Starbag is the largest Austrian contractor. We build almost everything. We're about the top 10 contractors in Europe. Just to show you where our markets are, mostly Central Europe, Eastern Europe, and we build almost anything the clients ask us to do. So we have a revenue about 14 billion. We have 73,000 people. That's just an idea to give you where I come from. My task is a little bit as head of development and innovation to a bit look forward what could be relevant for our business in the future. So I would like to start a journey with you now. And what we observe, always from a contractor's point of view, I'm sure there are other views too, the environment. First of all, technology changes fast, and people think that the environment, the built environment, doesn't change fast. Well, things are changing here too. Only 20 years later, after this image, this is the island of Manhattan of Shanghai, the city looks completely different. So we have a very rapid change also in the built environment. This here what you're seeing here is probably the largest unknown city in the world which is currently built. This is a city for 130 million people to the east of China. What you see here is we're using a lot of resources. And at a high speed, we need to develop living spaces for the people. So as I said, this city is now bringing together Beijing, Hebei, and the other region, Tianjin, and they're going to be home to 130 million people. So this is why we call it the built environment. This is nothing new for you. The cities are collapsing under traffic. What we have is also migration increases. That challenges also the housing situation all over the world, in all the cities. We have serious environmental issues. We have migration towards the cities, and the built environment is responsible for 80% of the usage of energy and 40% of the CO2 emissions. So if we want to change something, the built environment is the one big lever to reduce our emissions. We have other problems, resources. Although sand is abundant on the planet, we have problems on construction site to provide sand for concrete. Does anybody of you have an idea of how much concrete we produce every day, every second? 1,000 tons are being produced of concrete every second. And the sand for that is not, we cannot get the high quality sand everywhere, and we have to transport it from large distances. For example, as erroneous it may sound, the sand in the Arabic countries cannot be used for concreting, so they have to import sand from Australia, which of course damages the environment tremendously. Water is an issue in many places of the world, and that is of course adding to the problems, to the strain in the built environment. We have technologies, as I said before. Here, it's a nice image of how technologies change quickly. This is the Pralle inauguration in 2005, an image, and 8 years later, things change, and we are totally familiar with the situation. Everybody of us has a machine like that in the pocket, and we cannot think actually our life anymore without these machines. They're changing our mindset. Why is that possible? Why? Because ICT technologies, information and communication technologies, become very robust, very small, very cheap. The miniaturization is a big part of it. To the right, you see an image of a sensor by Bosch. Bosch is a large provider for technology in Germany and provides 80% of all sensors in your iPhones and other mobile devices. What you see here is a sensor, and for scale, you see a human hair. Other technologies are rapidly also proliferating, also due to their dropping price. For example, the drones issues. The drones, almost you can buy in every DIY store drones for a couple of €100. Drones are becoming a very important tool for the construction companies. My colleague Menno from BAM, I call you my colleague, yeah, we'll talk about it later too. So then you have the issues of decentralized energy provision, like solar energy. That is also dropping in prices and will be a large contributor to our energy supply. A couple of years ago, people were starting to talk about 3D printing, and people were proud of producing such a wall, which looked kind of funny. This is the first printing, 3D printing out of mortar. Mortar is a concrete with fine sand. A couple of years later, this is 2 years ago, we can print things which other people, crafty people, would take a long time. And the interesting thing about this, you can produce things which you cannot design anymore. No architect or designer could do this, but you can generate it with computer programs and then send it to the printer. So that's changing. With regard to printing, what you see here is the smallest printed object currently on which has been realized. This lady was printed and for scale on a human hair, nanoscale. So you can produce things at any scale right now through technology. That's the technological part, and we could go forever, and probably there's nothing new in particular for that. Now let's look what the business side of that is. Construction has many peculiarities. Things like that can happen. They are not always, but these are the reasons why construction have the reputation they have sometimes. So this is construction, or the construction industry suffers from low productivity. One reason is that people trying to explain that with this chart, I'm not trying to show many charts, is you have the digitalization degree on the ordinate, the y-axis, and to the right you see the productivity of businesses, of sectors. And you see to the right, top right, of course, information and communication technology. Okay, there's no surprise. That is highly digitalized, and the construction is to the lower end. So that's why many people right now are thinking, through technology, we can increase the productivity tremendously in construction. However, these are daily situations we have right now.
Das ist viel zu viel Papierzeug, ne? Und wenn du dann 1000 Tonnen, 2000 Tonnen hast, dann hast du die Faxendicke mit den Zetteln.
This is one of our construction sites. We are a large infrastructure provider. And what you see here is we deal a lot with passing information through analog, yeah, through paper. The delivery, the supply, the truck brought his load, and it has to be confirmed. And then you see how much the process is. That's reality. So the guy is complaining, it's way too much paper. We need to do something about this. There's another issue. If you look at 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, where the biggest companies in the world. And you see the classical energy suppliers were among the biggest, or General Electric. You could already tell Microsoft was moving up. Now, if you look at the picture and you see I had to correct it for 2017 and 18, I even can't keep up. All the top companies in terms of market capitalization are high-tech information companies. So what does that mean? So let's give it a thought. If now the biggest taxi company in the world has not a single vehicle, or if the largest hotel chain in the world doesn't have real estate on its own, then why would it be so surprising if the largest contractor in the world has no machines or no people, employ own people? So we have to think about these things, how are we going to change our business too? And then what is totally new to us, while now we all accept that iTunes, that Apple took over the phone industry or even the music industry, we are now seeing that actually new businesses are entering the business of construction. What you see here is the collaboration between stationary industry and IT companies, software companies, to enter the market. To the top right, you see Catera. It's a startup which has a large market capitalization. I will come back to that later. Remember the name Catera. They are big in the US and they're growing every day. And then there's a company, Sidewalk Talk. And who would know that behind Sidewalk Talk is Google trying to understand the business of the built environment. The slide before I showed you was one year old. This is headline from the German economics paper, the largest one. That's like the Financial Times of Germany. They said in March that Facebook and Google are bidding for Catera. So those big tech giants are entering the market of construction. And suddenly we can build houses for $4,000. It's about the new connectedness, which is changing the entire business. So what does it mean, the new connectedness? You have heard all of the Internet of Things. Internet of Things is what it is practically everything can be supplied, or the devices, sensoric devices, are everywhere in the entire environment. Roads, intersections, traffic, state of bridges, state of tunnels, state of roads. So what we gather is information, and of course you're all aware of it, and actually we are actually sensors, and we carry around sensors. If you know, when you go to you're using probably a lot your mobile device for checking the traffic if you want to go somewhere else, that information on your phone is just based on mobile device data. So we are producing that data everywhere. What this means is that wherever we go, even on a construction site, this is the monitor of an asphalt finisher. Asphalt finisher are these monster machines which make your roads. Yeah. So now we have a lot of data coming up, and we are converging them, and it's about the connected data. So we can produce better quality, and we have to go also produce it faster. The other thing is that now things can be connected which never were connected before, such as mobility and immobility. So now you have software to the what you see to the top left, to the lower left, apps driving or steering your car, and the same apps, which is to the top, the lower right, is driving or controlling your home, and provided by the same provider. This is Apple iOS. The interesting thing is now, to the top right, you see every car, every modern car or car which is newer than 6 years has about 200 sensors. They are being used for monitoring your machine, your engine. Is the lights okay? Do you have gas? Do you have flats? Everything is fine. Now, people found out that if you connect the data, which is just for controlling your engine, you can derive the state of the road. Now, there are people, such as Bosch, who are now scanning and mapping the state of roads through the sensors of the cars. Now, it comes out, of course, who owns the data? Is it the driver? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it the telecom communication company? And as you heard lately from what has been in the news, the problem of the data ownership is quite a big problem. Now, I would like to tell you why this digitalization thing is such a big deal. And it's funny enough, I just came into the library and you were talking about 100 years of Uponor, and I think if you understand a bit the history, you may understand the future quite much better. And the interesting is, as I walked into the library downstairs, there's an exhibition about the history of our universe. And that has actually a nice tie to it. So I would like to explain to you why the digitalization is a major event or a very remarkable phase in the human history. Why? If you look at this, sound up. There's nothing unusual about that. But your experience shows you that the reverse is nothing you experience in daily life. And the reason for that is the second law of thermodynamics. It goes only in one direction. All physical processes go in one direction. So if you I hope it. So the question is now, if everything works in that way, and this is the reason, is this entropy is increasing. The entropy is practically the order, is the unit for order in the universe. If that's the physical base, why do we have complex life? Such as or even societies, complex societies. That's a contradiction in terms. What I would like to say is, in order to understand why digitalization is so important, it is helpful to understand the history of information. And I would like to go back where the information started and on the Earth. It was quite remarkable. About 3.48 billion years ago, something remarkable happened on our planet. There's a mechanism which tells you why things can occur in a complex system. Although entropy tries to go only one direction, in certain niches of complex systems, you have the phenomenon of emergence. Emergence means things can develop from the existing items without being derived from it. So 3.8 billion years ago, this was exactly what happened. You had a chemical cocktail, you had a chemical diversity, you had energy abundant, galore, and you have liquid. And this is very important, the liquid, because in gases, molecules jet past each other. In solids, they are stuck in the lattice, in the crystal lattice. And in water, they practically cruise along and can bond. And so what is the magic of if you want to have the and they bonded, and the molecules bonded, and new molecules came up, and they were bigger, more complex, and actually life forms. The thing is like this: the complex molecules are very, very sensitive to the harsh environments. But what makes how can you protect some very sensitive molecule in a harsh environment? Not by making it robust, by making it a copy machine. And so the DNA is able to copy the template for information. And this is the biochemical information. And the best thing about this, the DNA is so perfect that it has even errors. And the errors are the mutations, and they allow to the life, regardless of the environmental conditions, whether it's fast, slow, cold, hot, and even meteorites, that they could always, the life became more complex and could survive. And then 165 million years ago, a new species came about mammals. And then they had to live in hiding for 100 million years before a meteorite killed the big lizards. And then, about 6 million years ago, a new hominid came up and roamed through the African savanna. And there's something, this new species was able to externalize information by using tools. And something special happened about 45 between 45 and 75,000 years ago. And that's also a special condition, it's also a Goldilocks condition, where we get into a new system of complexity. We had the hominids, they discovered fire as a new tool that changed the diet completely and the menu. And that fire and the new menu created the people, and this is what I would like to say to what you had mentioned before, getting together. They were stuck at the fire. And what happened is, these were the first events of collaboration. And people were sitting around the fire, had more time because of the cooking of the food, and language developed. And language was an extremely powerful tool. Why? Because for the first time, you could talk about things which don't exist. You could plan. That makes us different from all other animals on the planet. So we have this new situation, like what we had before when the DNA formed. We had the perfect environment. We had perfect conditions. We have now the language developed through the social diverse experience, the new nutrition, and the social network, the bonding possibilities. And then what happened then? So shortly after, people started to externalize information by the figurines. The first one was a 3D figurine, then came the painting on the caves. Then we have the cuneiform script. Then they had the hieroglyphs, and the alphabets came up. Interesting enough, then the mechanized duplication started with Gutenberg in the 16th century or 15th century. The first newspaper. This is all cultural information. We had first the biochemical, then we had the cultural information, and now we get the electrical information, the telegraph. And the interesting thing is, in the 40s of past century, we had the first digital computer by a guy, Zuse, who was a Berlin construction engineer. So far, until the 1993, information was reproduced and generated much more. But in 93, something very special happened too. Through the hypertext, information could be connected through the internet. And that changed, again, the dealing with the information completely. Shortly after, IBM launched in the late 90s a computer which was beat for the first time the chess champion, Kasparov. And then you had the Internet of Things, which I just mentioned before. In 2007, a machine came on the market which changed all the life of all of us. And in 2011, IBM produced a computer which could beat on the quiz show the contestants. And then Google purchased a thermometer company, and nobody understood why.
Today we have something.
But then happened something in 2013.
And you guys will be some of the first people outside of our team and outside of Google to ever ride in it.
In love with this whole concept.
Our lives are made up of lots and lots of little things, and a lot of those little things for most people have to do with getting from place to place. And in order to connect and do things, be with people, go places that they need to go.
So, shortly after, a computer by Google, the artificial intelligence could beat the world champion on Go. And then machines are starting, as of from the past 3 years, to read, to see. What you see here to the top left is a machine, a camera, an algorithm understanding the images in the speed as you see. Right? You hold the camera now, look at that, what happens now. It shows on the bikes and bike part, and this is a machine identifying its machine.
Since we only do legged robots, so no one has
and then comes the next mobility or connectedness from Boston Robotics.
What I think will be a nightmare-inducing robot if you're anything like me. But this is an experiment in combining wheels with legs with a very dynamic system that is balancing itself all the time and has a lot of knowledge of how to throw its weight around, which it uses to help stabilize itself. Here we're just testing out the various capabilities. This is much more efficient than a legged robot. It can carry a reasonably heavy load on a small footprint. And it's basically an exercise in seeing if we can do something like the humanoid that has less degrees of freedom, eventually could be less expensive, but still have significant capability.
Everybody is speaking about robotics, and this is already 2 years ago, and this will make an impact on work, on construction. So what we have here is now, we have the situation like, again, where the people were sitting at the fire. We have the situation of the Goldilocks situation. We have diverse sources of information. We have a lot of data, the big data, and we have machine learning reading the data. And that will change the way we work, the way we live. So that's why, I think if you understand, or if you put the what's happening right now in the context of the history of information, we will look at the upcoming developments quite differently. So this was an excursion to the history of information. So what does it mean is now that the built environment will be totally different. The built environment, this is now shown a graph, the life cycle approach. What you see here to the right is the life cycle approach. Materials coming in, being designed and processed, and what the two red arrows are showing what constructors usually do. They design and they produce, and they deliver a building, and then pass it on to what here is operation, maintenance, and then demolition, whatever. But things are becoming more and more intricate and are converging. So far, how we are working right now is every trade is doing his own business or its own business. The road people, even in our company, road people don't talk much to the housing people or the tunneling people. They are all separate in silos. But things are changing because the construction of tomorrow is connected. You're already in the operation phase. You're connected. Supply of energy, solar energy with your houses, information from the car to the house, or about the state of the bridge, state of the tunnel, or as I said before, the cars are scanning the state of the road. So we are producing information which is interconnected, and this will be true for the entire life cycle. So that's why we call now, from construction, we're moving towards the built environment. So what the information is now, that's how we see the information across the life cycle. This is an animation trying to show you. In the design phase, you put much more information, and this is also relevant for Uponor or the client.
Representing what later on will be built.
Much more.
Length, width, height, construction, and maintenance schedules. And what will it cost? Now we can bring all this to life with building information modeling.
So this is before you even build, you go into details.
To involve stakeholders earlier and more efficiently. Take, for instance, a school building, convincing design, smart technical building services, but please, could you make those windows bigger?
This is now during construction phase.
Shared design adaptations and smoother than ever planning processes, further supported by transparent and intuitive change requests. We can now simulate changes with all their implications for all involved trades.
One of the problems we have in construction is always, and you probably know that, I mean, I don't know how it's in Latvia, is that we pricing and cost overrun are a huge problem, especially with large public projects. And these technologies could help us control the cost development much better and much sooner.
An initial investment in BIM 5D will pay off over the whole life cycle.
So it's during operation now. So what it says is, practically the information put in during the design phase and planning phase will be usable for the entire life cycle of a project. So what do we look out for now? This is the premise. What we look out for from a large contractor. We have identified seven focus areas. I have to go back. Can I go back? So people and processes, we call that focus area 1. We realized that we have to, so far, construction sites are driven by contingencies. Yeah, that's why people always have to recursive information. I mean, something is not happening according to schedule. We have to fix it. So there's always an iterative process. So now we have to understand, like in stationary industry, how are the processes indeed? They have to be explicit. The other thing is, that's going very fast, is that the collaboration aspect between all participants of a project, they have to be improved, and they can be improved through the technology. Menno de Jong will be speaking about that very impressively later on. So the other aspect is the connecting tools of technologies is the other one. So far, we always have to deal with a lot of information, but it's always a person who can grasp so much. Now, these new technologies allow you on-site, either on a screen, where people from various venues or locations can see the same information and change it and edit it right away, or you get the information from a construction process and you feed it into a central system where it can be analyzed. Or, as you see to the right, even earthworks can be monitored much more in detail than so far possible. What we see here is also, actually what you see is, it's mainly the productivity potential which we want to raise in construction is throughout dealing better with information. So what you see here is we're running a lot of tunnel and boring machines in different cities at the same time. Do we know at what state, what are they doing at this current moment? So the other thing is the design and surveying. This is a huge topic on its own. So that's probably also important for you, or some of you, for designers. But the thing is, with the tools available, you can pre-see potential clashes, which is one of the most obvious applications for building information modeling. Also, Menno will speak about that more in detail. What is also interesting is that the phase from design to production will be shortened through the design to production. So you can design with the tools and pass it on to production machines right away. What we see here is this is not only for housing projects, also for road construction projects. And it goes so far that leads, of course, into the production. We will see much more modular buildings, and we will see different tools. This is a large construction infrastructure project in Stuttgart, the capital city of Baden-Württemberg, where we are having a controversial project. And many more projects are now being built, are being highly technically challenged. So what we did is now with in this case, the pillars are like tulip shapes of this train station, and we found the largest 3D printer available to the top left, and we built the castings with a 3D printer instead of with a conventional casts, and produce that way shapes which we cannot produce that easily usually. So here you see already in regular construction the change of technology, the application. Or this is a project we finished last year, the first autonomous compactor, because the the computer is much better able to say, okay, I have to go a step back. The quality of a road depends on exactly, now see, watch this guy, he's a bit nervous when he crosses the compacted road. Yeah. Nobody blames him, yeah, you never know what happens, yeah, if the system works or not. But the quality of the pavement depends on the number of times the compactor runs across the road at the temperature, at a given temperature. So with this information, we can be much better, provide much better quality. Next thing is the way the trading supply. We have to converge all the information on one trading platform. This is here a Swiss model. You can call it the Amazon for construction, where suppliers, designers, contractors meet and exchange information. New materials is a big thing. They're changing too. We are trying to recycle tires in our own factory for using the asphalt. But materials get completely different applications too. think it's not hard to imagine that these things will come up more and more, and they will be entering our lives everywhere. So new technologies, new materials, and we have, as a contractor, we have to be able to put them together. This is our expertise. So now comes to a big issue, and we could probably talk about this all day. And data is the availability of data, or the sovereignty of data. That's a major issue. But actually, whenever we do something now with the new technology, we produce data which is somewhere stored. And the question is now, who owns it? The big story, which is right now in all the media, but this is new for us contractors because we are not used to the data, amounts of data and types of data as the tech companies. So what we notice is right now, the economists of course said that the new oil is data, and the question is now, how do we use it? And what we are noticing right now is the software companies, they're having their own interest. They're providing us a service, but they keep the data, or at least they can look into the data. And there's a big problem now is, how do large companies who need the software, how do we deal with the data which can be easily copied, and how do we take an added value? Because we know if we reconnect information, we can produce new added value. And those who have access to the data, they can generate the added value. So from our point of view, as a large contractor, we have identified those 7 focus areas. I ran through those 7 focus areas very quickly. I know, I just touched them briefly. And and they're all interlinked. If you find the design phase changes technologically, it has an impact on the production, has an impact on the logistics, has an impact on the data. And of course, it will have legal issues. And the other aspect is we're seeing an integration of information across the entire life cycle. More and more things, and this will be probably also important for you, is going to happen in the design phase, and it will stay there. So to have the idea that is why all stakeholders probably at the beginning have to agree on what to do. Now, what's the outlook? And now we could spend here all evening, and maybe we could discuss tonight where are we going to go for. There's one thing for sure, although nobody can look in the future, technology will exponentially keep developing. This is now ICT technology. It will happen. We will be wearing information generators. The genetics, the biotechnology is scarily also impressive. It would be interesting to follow that. The question is now, everything seems to be possible, and Menno de Jong will have some impressive examples of what can be built already today with technology. The question is, for me, is from that point of view, is everything seems to be possible. This is a building we built in Seville through the technology, which couldn't have been built maybe 20 years ago, and changes the entire life, the feeling and the emotions of the people in Seville, or on those people. But also other people do crazy stuff, because everything seems to be possible. Yeah. So the question is, to me, for you tonight, the question is, what shall we want? We have to decide what we want. Technologically, a lot seems to be viable. I thank you very much for your attention.